Welcome to today's deep dive, where we'll be exploring one of history's most fascinating and controversial figures.
Ooh, I like where this is going.
Shihuangdi, the first emperor of a unified China.
Ambitious.
We'll be using excerpts from the 100 most influential world leaders of all time as our guide.
Sounds good?
Have you ever wondered how China, with its vast and diverse history, became a unified empire?
It's a question that has captivated historians for centuries.
And Shihuangdi is right at the heart of the answer.
He is. He's an enigma.
A blend of brilliant strategist and ruthless tyrant all rolled into one.
A powerful combination.
We're talking about a man who lived centuries ago, born around 259 BCE. Even his name, or rather names, tell a story.
Oh, how so?
Well, he was born Zhao Zheng, but later adopted the title Shihuangdi, meaning first sovereign emperor.
Wow, that's quite a statement.
It certainly is. What does that tell us about his ambition?
It's a declaration of power. A signal that he was not just another king, but the founder of a new era for China. To understand the magnitude of his achievement, we need to step back and picture China before his rise. Imagine a land fractured into warring states, each vying for dominance.
Constant conflict.
It was a period of chaos.
Kind of like trying to run a software company where every department uses a completely different coding language.
Exactly. It just wouldn't work.
Total chaos.
Now, in this chaotic landscape, the Qin state, located in northwestern China, emerged as the most powerful.
And they had a secret weapon.
Interestingly, other states saw them as barbarous.
Yeah.
But the Qin had a secret weapon, a highly developed system of government and military organization.
Based on?
The philosophy of legalism.
Okay, legalism. I'll admit I haven't brushed up on my ancient Chinese philosophy lately.
Don't worry, not many have.
What's the deal with legalism?
It advocated for a strong, centralized state ruled by a powerful sovereign.
Sounds intense.
It was. It emphasized strict laws, harsh punishments, and absolute obedience to authority.
Tough love.
Think of it as the ultimate tough love approach to governance.
So not exactly a system that encourages free thought and debate.
Not exactly. But it was undeniably effective in creating a powerful and disciplined state.
Effective.
And this is where young Zhao Zheng, our future Shihuangdi, enters the stage. He inherited the throne of Qin at just 13 years old.
13? Can you imagine being handed the reins of a powerful kingdom at that age?
It's hard to fathom, isn't it?
That's a lot of pressure.
But Shihuangdi rose to the challenge. He was a brilliant strategist, a master of espionage and military tactics.
A master strategist.
He saw the potential of a unified China and was willing to do whatever it took to achieve that vision.
And he wasn't alone, was he?
Absolutely. He had some seriously skilled generals at his disposal.
So it was a team effort.
Oh, absolutely. It wasn't just about him sitting in a palace issuing orders. He had a knack for recognizing and utilizing talent.
So he led his armies to conquer the remaining 6 states.
One by one, until finally in 221 BCE, he achieved his goal of unifying China under his rule.
That is incredible.
It is. To conquer and unify such a vast and diverse land.
I can't imagine the resistance he must have faced.
Well, brute force played a part, no doubt. But he was also incredibly cunning.
Oh, I bet.
He used a combination of military might, strategic alliances, and even bribery to achieve his aims.
Bribery, that's a bold move.
He was effective, though. He understood the art of playing his enemies against each other.
So he was a brilliant military strategist, a cunning politician.
He was.
And now he's the emperor of a unified China. What did he do with all that power?
That's where things get even more interesting. He didn't just want to conquer. He wanted to control.
Control.
He set about implementing a series of sweeping reforms designed to solidify his power and create a lasting legacy.
Okay, so this is where his infamous standardization policies come into play, right?
You got it.
Weights and measures the written language, even.
Exactly. It might seem like a minor detail, but it was revolutionary.
Revolutionary how?
Well, imagine the logistical nightmare of trying to run a vast empire where every region has its own system for measuring things.
Oh, I see. Its own set of laws, its own variations of the written language. Chaos.
It'd be chaos, like trying to build a website using different coding languages for each section. You'd never get anything done.
Exactly.
But why go to such lengths to standardize everything? Was it just about control?
Control was certainly a factor, but there was a deeper strategic vision at play.
Oh.
Shihuangdi understood that standardization was essential for creating a unified and efficient empire.
Efficiency?
It would facilitate trade communication and governance across his vast territory.
So he was essentially creating the infrastructure for a modern state centuries before its time.
You could say that.
It wasn't just weights and measures, right?
Yeah, it was.
He also standardized the written language.
Which must have been a huge undertaking considering the diversity of languages and dialects across China.
It was a monumental task.
But it was crucial for his vision. By creating a unified written script, he ensured that everyone, from government officials to merchants, could communicate effectively across the empire.
It's like he was creating the internet of his time, connecting people and ideas across vast distances.
Exactly. And to make this interconnected empire function smoothly.
He needed a robust infrastructure.
Roads and canals.
So he invested heavily in their construction.
Creating a network that spanned his vast territory.
Yes.
Okay, I'm starting to see a pattern here. Conquer, unify, control, connect.
It seems so.
Shihuangdi was all about building a strong, efficient, and interconnected empire.
He was.
But all this building and reforming must have come at a cost.
Oh, there was always a cost.
What was life like for the average person under his rule?
That's a question that historians continue to debate. There's no doubt that Shihuangdi's rule was authoritarian. He was obsessed with order and control, and his methods were often brutal.
Brutal.
But he also brought stability to a land that had known only chaos for generations.
So it's a bit of a mixed bag then.
It is.
A classic case of the ends justify the means.
Perhaps.
He achieved incredible things.
He did.
But at what price?
That's the heart of the debate surrounding Shihuangdi's legacy.
Was he a visionary unifier?
Or a ruthless tyrant?
A question that's not easily answered.
But it's definitely one worth exploring.
Welcome back to our deep dive into the life and legacy of Shihuangdi. Before the break, we were talking about the double-edged sword of his rule, the incredible achievements, and the heavy price that came with them.
Yeah, a complex figure for sure.
So let's dig deeper into the impact of his policies on everyday life in ancient China.
Nope.
We've touched on the standardization of weights and measure.
Yeah, one of his most impactful moves, in my opinion.
But he also standardized the legal code, right?
Right.
What did that mean for ordinary people?
Well, it's fascinating to consider the implications. On the one hand, a unified legal code brings consistency and fairness.
At least in theory.
Yes, in theory. Everyone is subject to the same laws.
Regardless of their social status.
Exactly, or where they live.
So no more local lords making up their own rules as they go along.
Precisely. It's a step towards a more equitable society.
However.
There's always a however.
Right. The Qin legal code was heavily influenced by legalism.
Which, as we discussed, was all about strict laws and harsh punishments.
Oh.
Exactly. So while there was a sense of uniformity, the system was also incredibly unforgiving.
Order and control above all else.
It makes sense considering his goal was to unify and stabilize a previously fractured nation.
Yeah, but how did people react to this new way of life?
I mean, there's no doubt that some segments of society benefited from the stability and order.
Sure, like merchants.
Exactly. They thrived under the unified system of weights and measures and the improved infrastructure.
But for others?
For others, particularly those who were used to more autonomy under the old feudal system, these changes were disruptive.
And often unwelcome.
Yes.
And let's not forget the massive labor required for his grand projects. The Great Wall. The network of roads and canals, even his own extravagant tomb complex.
Oh, yes. Those projects demanded a huge workforce.
These weren't just engineering feats. They were feats of human labor.
And historical records suggest that forced labor was common practice.
So the burden of these grand endeavors fell heavily on the shoulders of ordinary people. So while Shihuangdi might be celebrated for his vision and ambition, we can't overlook the human cost of his achievements.
We can't.
It's a reminder that history is often written from the perspective of the victors.
It is.
But there are always untold stories of those who toiled and suffered in the shadows.
Absolutely. It's important to consider those untold stories and try to understand the lived experiences of people from all walks of life under Shihuangdi's rule.
I agree. And to really grasp the magnitude of his impact, we can't ignore his most iconic and enduring legacy, the Great Wall of China.
Ah, yes, the Great Wall. It's hard to imagine the scale of this project. Thousands of miles of fortifications stretching across mountains and deserts.
It's mind-boggling. What was the driving force behind its construction?
Well, the primary purpose was defense.
Yeah.
The northern borders of China were constantly under threat from nomadic tribes. And Shihuangdi saw the wall as a way to secure his empire from these incursions.
It's almost like a physical manifestation of his desire for control.
A wall to keep out chaos and maintain order?
But it must have been an incredibly challenging and dangerous undertaking.
Absolutely. The construction of the Great Wall was a massive logistical feat. It required not only vast amounts of materials, but also a huge workforce, often working in harsh and dangerous conditions.
is hard to imagine the sheer manpower and ingenuity required to build something of that scale, especially with the technology available at the time.
It truly is a testament to human ingenuity and perseverance.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a reminder that Shihuangdi wasn't just a conqueror. He was a builder, a visionary who saw the potential of a unified and interconnected China.
But even with all his accomplishments, his reign wasn't without its shadows. We've touched on the harshness of his rule, the forced labor, and the suppression of dissent.
Right.
But there were also darker elements at play, right? I remember reading about assassination attempts.
Multiple assassination attempts.
And a growing sense of paranoia within his court.
Yes. As Shihuangdi consolidated his power, he also became increasingly isolated and suspicious.
Makes sense.
The assassination attempts fueled his paranoia.
I bet.
He saw enemies everywhere.
Everywhere.
And became obsessed with achieving immortality, consulting with alchemists and seeking magical elixirs.
Oh, wow. It's fascinating how the pursuit of absolute power can twist even the most brilliant minds.
It's true.
He achieved the unification of China, a feat that had eluded his predecessors for centuries. Yet he spent his later years consumed by fear and obsessed with holding on to his power.
It's a cautionary tale, isn't it?
It is.
A reminder that even the most powerful individuals are still human, vulnerable to the corrupting influences of fear and paranoia.
And in Shihuangdi's case, this descent into suspicion and fear had a profound impact on his rule.
It did.
And ultimately on the fate of his dynasty.
Okay, so we've talked about his rise to power, his ambitious reforms, and the darker side of his rule.
What about the end of his story?
What happened after his death?
Did his meticulously crafted empire crumble without him?
Well, that's where we pick up next time. Join us then as we explore the aftermath of Shihuangdi's reign and the lasting impact he had on Chinese history.
Welcome back. We've been exploring the life and legacy of Shihuangdi, the first emperor of a unified China. We've seen his ambition, his brilliance, and his flaws. Now, what happened after his death?
Yeah, so did his empire survive without him?
Did it? I mean, he spent his life obsessed with control, even seeking immortality.
It's kind of ironic, isn't it?
It is.
He was obsessed with control.
Yeah.
But his dynasty, the Qin dynasty, crumbled just 4 years after his death in 210 BCE.
Wow, 4 years. That's a shockingly rapid collapse. What went wrong? Was it just a matter of, having the wrong successor?
Well, the choice of successor certainly played a role. The reasons for the Qin dynasty's downfall were more complex.
Like what?
Well, remember, all that control Shihuangdi exerted, the suppression of opposing viewpoints, the heavy burdens placed on the populace.
Yeah, it seems like that would cause some problems.
Those factors created a lot of resentment and instability just beneath the surface.
So it's like he built this magnificent structure, but maybe he didn't pay enough attention to the foundation?
Yeah, good analogy.
And once he was gone, the cracks started to show and the whole thing came tumbling down.
Precisely. His death created a power vacuum. And those old tensions he'd kept suppressed those regional factions and opposing philosophies. They resurfaced with a vengeance.
So those issues never really went away.
No, they didn't.
Yeah.
Rebellions broke out across the empire, leading to a period of chaos and civil war.
So it's like a Greek tragedy almost. He achieves this incredible feat of unifying China only to see his legacy crumble so quickly after his death.
It really is tragic.
But was his impact completely erased? Did the dynasties that followed just sweep away everything he built?
That's where it gets interesting. While the Qin dynasty was short-lived, Shihuangdi's influence cast a long shadow on Chinese history.
How so?
Remember his obsession with standardization, the creation of a unified bureaucratic system, the emphasis on a strong central authority.
Yeah, he really seemed to dislike anything that hinted at chaos or decentralization.
Exactly. And while later dynasties might have rejected the harshness of legalism, they couldn't ignore the effectiveness of many of his administrative innovations.
So they kept some of his ideas.
The bureaucratic system he put in place, with its emphasis on meritocracy and standardized examinations, became a model for future Chinese governments.
So he laid the groundwork for the way China was governed for centuries, even though his own dynasty didn't last.
Yeah, it's kind of a paradox, isn't it?
It is.
He's both a cautionary tale about the perils of absolute power and a visionary leader whose ideas shaped the course of Chinese history. His reign may have been brief.
Yeah.
But his impact is undeniable.
It's a lot to process, honestly. We started this deep dive with a simple question: how did China become unified? But now I see it's not just about conquering territories, it's about ideas, about systems of governance, about the enduring legacy of a single complex individual.
Exactly. And that's the beauty of exploring history. It's not just about memorizing dates and names. It's about grappling with the complexities of human nature, the interplay of power and ambition, the lasting impact of decisions made centuries ago.
It's humbling, really. Shihuangdi reminds us that even the most powerful figures are flawed and human. Their achievements often come at a cost, and their legacies are rarely simple or straightforward.
And that's why it's so important to continue asking questions, to challenge assumptions, and to consider multiple perspectives when studying history. There's always more to uncover, more layers to peel back, more nuances to appreciate.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into the life and legacy of Shihuangdi, I think we're left with more questions than answers. Was he a hero or a villain?
A visionary or a tyrant?
Maybe he was a bit of both.
Perhaps the most important takeaway is that history isn't black and white. It's a tapestry of grays, woven from the threads of ambition, power, and the enduring human struggle to create order out of chaos.
It's up to each of us to study those threads, to explore the past with a critical and open mind, and to draw our own conclusions about the figures who shaped the world we live in today. So as you reflect on Xu Huangdi's story, consider the lasting impact he had on China's political and cultural landscape, and ask yourself, what lessons can we learn from his triumphs and his failures? How does his story resonate with the challenges we face in our own time? That's where we'll leave you for today. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the life and legacy of Shihuangdi, the first emperor of a unified China.